death, the final frontier, to boldly go where every man has gone before. Now, it's not your favourite subject, it's not my favourite subject, but I think I found a cure for it. I should get the Nobel Prize for this. But I won't, I'll be overlooked. Now, if you don't want to talk about death, on the other channel there's a guy who lives in his van, and then there is an alternative channel where there's a guy who's eating a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Manchester and talking about it, and then at the end he rates it out of 10. But, you know, if you've had your fill of those, then listen and hear me out. Now, when I say I found a cure for death, it will come as no surprise that I've exaggerated a little bit, but only a little bit. I found a cure for the problem of death, which I think is, pretty close to the same thing. If you look across YouTube, for example, you'll see there are thousands of people who have, since its conception, been talking about how to live forever. How to live forever. And most of the time, it's about taking a supplement, or it's about some kind of special diet or some workout regime. All of that, of course, is absolute rubbish. It's just nonsense, pure nonsense. Life is a very simple thing. We complicate life. When an animal comes to die, it doesn't make a big deal about it. It kind of knows when the end is coming. It's not going to be kept alive with 3 years of chemotherapy, or sometimes 10 years of battling with chemotherapy, where every single day you're crawling on your hands and knees and vomiting. An animal doesn't do that. An animal isn't in a hospital full of tubes, having metals pumped into its blood. What an animal does is it crawls under a bush, it curls up in a ball, and it dies overnight. Very peaceful, not so much anguish, very quick. And we've all got relatives who've spent 2 years, haven't we, battling, where we've thought enough is enough. And yet there's a problem, isn't there, with euthanasia. We euthanize every day our pets, our cats, our dogs. It's perfectly normal. That's how cats and dogs die, isn't it? They get taken in a little basket down to the vet, and the vet gives them the injection and they've gone. And it's a really difficult day. It's very upsetting, of course. But it's better than Granny. Granny, who didn't get out of bed for 2 years until she was just a skeleton. And all she could do was every other day sip Earl Grey tea, but no milk. Even the milk made her sick, until she was unable to speak in the last 6 weeks, basically comatose. Now, in the UK, of course, if you want to have a peaceful death like a dog or a cat, you have to get somebody to drive you often to Switzerland, and I think it's Zurich, isn't it, where there is a clinic there, which for about 12,000 euros, dignitas they're called, will put you gently to sleep in a dignified way. It's a long way to go, though, isn't it? It's not very pleasant. You know, you might be in the back of the car because you can't really sit up. And there are states in America like Oregon where it's legal. The Netherlands, I think it's legal. There are a few countries which have made euthanasia legal. But in the countries where it is legal, it's still quite a convoluted process to go through. And there are lots of conditions. You know, you have to be within 6 months of death, and that has to be signed off. You have to be in extraordinary pain. You know, you have to prove that you can't handle the pain. Well, some people want to go before they can't handle the pain. They want to go when there's a little bit of pain, or they want to go when there's no pain, and they've simply made a decision that they've lived their life and they've had enough. Now, if you've just lived your life and you've had enough, you are not allowed to be put down. You have to have a good reason, and the reason normally has to be you are in agony. Now, the reason that we oppose euthanasia, of course, so the reason that we don't treat people the same kind way that we do our dogs and cats is to do with religion, of course. It's to do with the sacredness of life, that we believe life is sacred, but it's just completely made up. It's a made up notion. Life is not sacred. Life is just what it is. Okay, it has no sacred nature about it whatsoever. Okay, we're born into this world, and the time comes quite shortly after we're born, after we've matured, get old, and we die. And there's nothing sacred about this business whatsoever. And there's certainly nothing sacred nor dignified about hanging on after you've done your duty on earth, whatever your duty might be. Some people might say it's to procreate. I have no idea. But when you want to go, I don't know why you can't just go. You know, it's not just me saying this, of course. You know, I mean, there's been plenty of philosophers like Hume who said that life isn't kind of special. What is special about life, he said, is that we have autonomy. And the whole point about having autonomy is we can make decisions for ourselves, and the biggest decision of all we're not allowed to make. Absolutely ridiculous. We should have freedom over our own bodies. I mean, obviously, we're trying to, in most of my Okay, so this is part two. Part one was interrupted by trick-or-treaters, and they gave me such a shock that my entire studio sort of collapsed as I ran to the door, still with my microphone tied to me, pulling over the camera. But there you go. These things happen. So what was I saying? Okay, so I was talking about that it's not just me who talks about the fact that, you know, life isn't a sacred thing and that we should have autonomy, particularly over our own bodies, and the biggest decision we should make or should be able to make is the one about when it's time to say, you know, I've had enough. I've had enough of life. What's wrong with that? You know, I've brought up some children, and I've, you know, worked myself to the bone, and I've travelled to all 5 continents, etc., etc. Make your own list. You know, I've seen 2 of the 7 wonders of the world. I've been married 10 times. Whatever, it's your list. I'm going to call it a day now. I'm going to call it a day. We should be able to say that, as simple as that. Death is already a very clinical thing, isn't it? Like, we end up in a hospital, bright fluorescent lights, they don't even turn them off at night. We lie there in a hospital bed, in a room full of other people who are strangers, in beds not far from us, with overworked nurses who do a great job, but they don't really have a lot of time. And there's no sense of the sort of comfort of death that used to happen perhaps in your own home, a slightly more natural death. Nowadays, of course, there are always ways of prolonging life, even if it's only by a few weeks or a few months, and that means hospital. So we get isolated in death. It's a very strange ending in a way, isn't it? It's quite cold. Does everybody want to do that? I don't know. So I think we should be able to show mercy on ourselves and die in a more appropriate way at a time of our own choosing. And I really don't like the idea that other people can dictate the terms of my own death. Vets are very good at this because they put animals down every day. They know how it works. They know about grief because they can see it in the clients who come in. They have systems and protocols for how to deal with it so that it's done in a very gentle, unstressful and dignified manner. What we call a good death. Dignified, peaceful. Not a technological death, really. And I think that that can be a really excellent close to life. If there is anything sacred about life, it would be about that final moment, wouldn't it? If it was done gently and peacefully at a time of your own choosing. So I think the best thing to do would be to allow vets to put people down as well as animals. They know the procedure, they know how it works, they already have the room, they have the space available, they can make the slight changes they want to in order to make it comfortable for people. And can you imagine how easy it would be? Maybe you're sitting at your desk and you're thinking, do you know, I've had enough. I've had enough. For whatever reason, your own decisions, your own choice. And you make an appointment with the vet. Now, nowadays, you can make an appointment with the vet online. You don't even have to call. You just do it online. You book it online. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, this doesn't make any sense. It's not practical. Well, why is it not practical? Of course it's practical. It's perfectly easy to organise. But if you're saying that anybody could just then make an appointment, no, there would have to be some kind of certification. There would need to be some sort of authority that would kind of give you the paperwork necessary. This would stop people getting drunk and just walking into a vet's. That is not going to work. You know, rather like you cannot just walk into a gun shop in America and buy a gun to shoot your wife. There's normally a 3-day cooling off period. So you walk into the gun shop, you say, I'd like to buy a gun, I'm really angry, can't you see, I'm sweating and I'm red and I'm gonna kill a bitch. And they say, well, yeah, we can sell you a gun, here we are, this is the gun you can buy, come and collect it in 3 days. 3 days later, you've calmed down. The wife has forgiven you, no need for the gun, no need for the murder. It would be the same here. So you couldn't just walk into a vet's, of course. You'd have to go through a process of getting a doctor's certificate. Maybe there'd have to be 2 doctors involved. Maybe your own doctor and maybe some kind of doctor's board in the local hospital would have to make sure that you are of sound mind and that your rationale for this action was okay, and that's fine, that's the end of it. You don't need to make it more complicated than that. You know, it's not rocket science. Hello, I'd like to die, please, I've had enough. You have 2 interviews with 2 doctors. And they say, well, he's got a legitimate reason. He's rationalised it in his own mind. He's absolutely of sound mind. Let him do it. And then you can make the appointment at the vet. And can you imagine the scenario where you are, you know, perhaps coming to the end of your life, like you're an older person, maybe in your 70s or 80s even. Maybe you've spent the last 15 years alone. I mean, really alone. You know, where the only conversation you had was with the checkout girl. And now, the little supermarket you used to buy your stuff from, it's got one of those self-service checkouts. And for the last 5 years, you've not even had a conversation with the checkout person. But you have had companionship because you've had a lovely little dog. Maybe a little Westie or something, or a little sausage dog. You can name the breed. Again, your own decisions, what you choose to get. You got the little dog. It's been your only friend. And the vet tells you, I'm afraid, that the dog's only got a few weeks to live and it's best to put it down. It's in pain. It's got a tumour. The most sensible thing, the only really compassionate thing to do is now put the dog down. I'm very, very sorry. And you realise that you've had enough. That this is the final straw. You don't want to live on for another 2-3 years, looking at an empty dog bed. Or a cat bed. Or a budgie bed. Whatever. And so you make an appointment at the vet, and the little old lady goes down there, or the little old guy goes down there with his dog. You lie together on a very, very comfortable kind of things like a sort of elevated mattress type thing. Very comfortable, low light. You cuddle up with your dog, and the two of you go together. Perfect. Would be easily organised. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I can't afford it. Okay, well, there are two things to that. We all know that vets run an illegal cartel and have done for decades. That's why vet bills and vet medicine is so expensive. They know exactly what they're doing. They're taking advantage of people who will pay anything to keep their pets alive. And also will pay anything to make sure their pets die without suffering. So yes, vets are extremely expensive. And they con men and women to a great extent, I think, vets. Yes, they do good work, but the money they're charging, particularly for medicines, is just way, way out of proportion to what it should be. They know they're onto a good thing. But, so what would you charge, do you think? What do you think that they would charge to put somebody down? I think for an animal, to put an animal down, they don't overcharge on putting animals down, actually, too much, because of it's like rubbing it in, isn't it? They'd like to charge about €700 for that, but they can't get away with it, because it's like a sort of, my cat's died and I haven't really got very much money. They're not going to say, well, so you get a bit of a discount. It's probably a couple of €100 for the whole service, a couple of €100, something like that, not too bad. But for a human, what's it going to be? Now remember, they don't dispose of the body. There's somebody else who comes and does that and takes the body away. All they do is they need a couple of nice comfy armchairs for the relatives, and that's all they need, and the room. So I guess they're going to charge probably between €5,000 and €6,000, probably. Something like that. It might be more. It's quite a lot of money. But remember, this is the last thing you ever have to pay for. So who cares? It doesn't matter. So if you could just contact your local vet when you were at the end of your tether, for whatever reason, imagine how much more enjoyable going through your life would be. There'd be none of those end-of-life issues that kind of haunt you. Am I going to die like my father, who I watched in agony for 3 years while he battled lung cancer and couldn't breathe? I mean, I think going through your life knowing that death would come quite easily like that, at the time of your own choosing, at your local veterinary place, with a simple booking, I think that would give you real peace of mind.